If you stand perfectly still in the heart of the great desert, under the vast, crushing weight of the midday sun, or beneath the cold, silver gaze of the midnight moon, you will hear the wind. It is a sound we know well, the dry hiss of the sand moving over sand, the friction of a billion grains of dust shifting in an endless, restless sleep. It is the sound of thirst. It is the sound of emptiness. But whisperers and wanderers tell us that if you listen deeper, past the wind, past the heat, past the noise of the modern world, you may hear something else. A phantom sound, a ghost frequency trapped in the vibration of the earth. It sounds like the gentle drumming of fingers against a taut drumskin. It sounds like a soft rhythmic patter on broad green leaves. It sounds like the rush of a river where no river flows. It is the memory of rain. Tonight, we shall not walk across the scorching dunes as they are now. We shall not shield our eyes from the blinding glare of the waste. Instead, we will close our eyes and let the dry air turn cool against our skin. We will let the golden sand dissolve, grain by grain, until the yellow fades into emerald, and the silence is broken by the call of waterbirds. Let us drift back through the corridors of time, deep into the shadowed halls of prehistory, to a time before the maps were drawn, before the pyramids rose, before the Sphinx opened its eyes. Let us journey to the green Sahara. It is difficult for the mind to hold this image. It feels like a dream, or perhaps a contradiction. To think of the Sahara, that name which is synonymous with desolation, as a paradise seems like a forbidden thought. And yet, the earth does not lie. The memory is written in the geology. It is carved into the bedrock. It is sleeping beneath the sand. There was a time, thousands of years ago, when the greatest desert on our planet was a garden. It was a world of savannas that stretched as far as the eye could see, rippling in the breeze like a living ocean of grass. It was a land of megalakes, vast inland seas that mirrored the blue sky, teeming with fish, hippopotamuses, and crocodiles. The monsoon, that great engine of life, did not shun this place as it does now. It embraced it. Clouds, heavy and dark with promise, would roll in from the ocean, crossing barriers that are now impassable. They would break open over the plains, and the rain would fall, sweet, life-giving, and relentless. It washed over the stone, it filled the basins, and it woke the flowers. In this era, the silence of the desert had not yet been born. The air was filled with the lowing of wild cattle, the trumpeting of elephants, and the laughter of children who had never known the meaning of the word thirst. We know this not because of textbooks, but because of the ghosts left behind on the walls of the world. Deep in the center of the Sahara, rising like a fortress of silence, lies the Tassili Najer Plateau. It is a lunar landscape today, a labyrinth of eroded sandstone towers and twisted arches that look like the ruins of a city built by giants. The wind howls through these stone corridors, carving them into shapes that defy logic. But if you walk into the shadowed alcoves, into the shallow caves protected from the sun, you will find the testimony of the lost. Here, painted in ochre, red, and white, are the dreams of the stone itself. The art is ancient, dating back to the dawn of human expression. And what did they paint, these forgotten artists? Did they paint the scorpion? Did they paint the camel? Did they paint the sun beating down on a lifeless rock? No. They painted herds of cattle. Hundreds of them. their horns curving gracefully, their bodies fat and healthy, grazing on lush pastures. They painted giraffes reaching for the leaves of tall acacia trees. They painted hunters chasing antelopes through dense thickets of green. And most haunting of all, they painted us. They painted figures swimming. In the dusty, dry caves of the Cave of Beasts, miles from the nearest oasis, there are paintings of men and women floating horizontally, their limbs outstretched, suspended in an invisible medium. They are diving into lakes that evaporated 5,000 years ago. They are swimming in water that has turned to dust. To look upon these images is to feel a profound sense of vertigo. It is a collision of two realities. The eye sees the dry, cracked rock, but the soul feels the splash of the water. It is a message sent across the Milkanitshuar, a whisper from our ancestors saying, "We were here. We lived in the garden, and we thought it would last forever." Imagine the life of the people who held the brush. Picture a twilight evening in this lost world. The air is humid and thick, smelling of wet earth and blooming jasmine. A fire crackles, not for warmth against a desert freeze, but to cook the catch of the day. Fish pulled from a river that flowed where a sand dune now stands. The people sit together, watching the stars appear one by one in a sky that is not clouded by dust, but washed clean by the rain. They do not look at the horizon with fear. They do not hoard water in skins, terrified of spilling a drop. Water is abundant. It is a friend. It is the blood of the world. They bathe in it. They drink deeply of it. They sleep to the sound of its movement. They are innocent of the future. They live in the eternal present, unaware that the ground beneath their feet is slowly, imperceptibly changing. They could not know that the climate is a pendulum. They could not know that the earth wobbles on its axis, a slow cosmic nod that takes thousands of years to complete. It is a cycle as inevitable as the rising sun, but so slow that a human life is but a blink within it. The Green Sahara was a momentary breath in the long slumber of the planet. And slowly, oh so slowly, the earth began to exhale. It did not happen in a day, or a year, or even a lifetime. It happened in the quiet spaces between the generations. Perhaps the eldest noticed that the rains arrived a week later than usual. Perhaps the hunters noticed that the lake had receded a few paces from the shore. Perhaps the grass on the southern ridge turned gold a little earlier in the season. But the change was soft. It was a slow fading, like the dimming of a lamp. The monsoon bands began to shift southward, retreating like a tide going out. The clouds became fewer. The sun became bolder. The lush canopy of the savanna began to thin, allowing the heat to touch the soil directly. The moisture in the ground began to evaporate, rising up to join the sky, never to return. And so, the stone began to remember. As the water vanished, the people etched their memories harder into the rock. As the lakes shrank into puddles, and the puddles into mud, the paintings became more frantic, more sacred. They were capturing the world that was slipping through their fingers. They were trying to hold on to the rain with pigment and stone. When we look at the Tassili frescoes today, we are looking at a prayer. We are seeing a civilization pleading with the sky to remain open. But the sky closed. The silence descended. The green turned to brown, and the brown turned to gold. The roots of the great trees withered and snapped, and the sand, which had been waiting patiently on the edges of the world, moved in to claim its kingdom. It is a somber thought, the death of a paradise. But there is a secret hidden here, a secret that brings a strange, quiet comfort in the deep of the night. The water did not truly leave. Science tells us that matter cannot be destroyed. It only changes form. And in the desert, the water did not simply vanish into the void. Much of it sank. It seeped down through the cracks in the limestone, filtering through the sediment, dripping deeper and deeper into the dark, cool belly of the earth. Beneath the Sahara, hidden from the sun and the wind, lie vast aquifers, oceans of fossil water, trapped in the rock for 10,000 years. It is the same water that fell as rain on the green savanna. It is the same water that the painted swimmers glided through. It is preserving itself in the eternal dark, waiting. The desert is not empty. It is merely a vault. It is a treasure chest, locked tight, guarding the memory of the wet earth. So, when you close your eyes tonight, do not imagine the desert as a place of death. Imagine it as a place of sleeping life. Imagine the sand dunes not as waves of dust, but as a blanket pulled over a dreaming giant. Deep below, in the silent, crushing dark, the water is still there. It is still and calm, holding the memory of the sunlight it saw millennia ago. It holds the reflection of the faces of the first people. It holds the echo of the thunder that once rolled across the plains. And sometimes, when the night is very quiet and the mind is drifting between waking and sleeping, you can almost feel it. A coolness rising from the floor. A scent of rain that shouldn't be there. A softness in the air. It is the stone, releasing its dream. It is the forgotten monsoon, whispering to you from the other side of time, reminding you that nothing is ever truly lost. It is only hidden. It is only waiting for the wheel to turn, for the pendulum to swing, and for the rain to fall again. Rest now in that certainty. Let the image of the green plain soothe your mind. Let the phantom sound of the ancient rain wash over you, carrying away the dust of the day, leaving only the clear, cool silence of the night. The desert sleeps, the water waits, and the history of the world drifts on like a leaf floating on a river, moving slowly toward the sea of dreams. We leave the soft memory of the rain behind us. The green fades into the realm of memory, and the world turns to gold, to ochre, to the deep burning red of the setting sun. The earth hardens, the horizon expands. We find ourselves standing not on soft grass, but upon the bedrock, the ancient, unyielding spine of the world. Here, in the center of the emptiness, a new sound begins to emerge from the quiet. It is not the song of a bird, nor the rustle of leaves. It is a rhythmic, hypnotic sound. Clink, clink, clink. It is the sound of metal kissing stone. It is here that we witness the rise of the improbable. Out of the shifting sands and the heat-hazed distance, a shape begins to form. It is geometric, sharp, and defiant. It is a city rising from the dust, summoned by the will of a people whose names have been eroded by the centuries. A people we call the Garamantes, though they may have had a different secret name for themselves, a name known only to the wind. Let us walk toward them. Let us move through the veil of history and stand beside them as they lay the first stone. The air here is heavy with heat, shimmering like a mirage. But the builders move with a slow, deliberate grace. There is no haste here. In the ancient world, time was not a commodity to be spent. It was a river to be navigated. Imagine the tactile sensation of the stone. It is sandstone, warm to the touch, rough against the palm of your hand. It smells of dried clay and ancient minerals. The builder lifts the block, heavy, solid, real, and places it upon the earth. It settles with a dull thud, a sound that vibrates through the soles of the feet. This is not merely construction. It is an act of anchoring. In a landscape where the dunes are constantly shifting, constantly moving like a slow golden ocean, these people chose to create something that would not move. They chose to drive a stake into the heart of eternity. They were the architects of the invisible. Wizards tell us that they did not build randomly. They did not simply pile stone upon stone to create a shelter. No, they were watching the sky. Look up. Above the rising walls, the sky is a vast, unblemished dome of azure. At night, it becomes a chaotic masterpiece of diamonds scattered on black velvet. The Garamantis understood that the earth below was merely a reflection of the heavens above. The streets of this rising city were not laid out by chance. They were drawn by the stars. The main avenue, wide and paved with the flat, pale stones, aligns perfectly with the rising sun on the winter solstice. The temples are positioned to catch the light of the Sirius. The gates face the cardinal winds. To walk through this city is to walk through a clockwork mechanism, a machine built of rock that is tethered to the eternal rotation of the galaxy. There is a profound peace in this order. It suggests that even here, in the middle of the wild, untamed desert, there is logic, there is meaning. As the walls rise higher, casting long, cool shadows across the sand, we begin to understand their mastery of the elements. They were not fighting the desert. They were dancing with it. They understood the secret language of the wind. They built their walls thick, incredibly thick, to hold back the heat of the day and release it slowly during the cold of the night. They designed narrow alleyways that curved and twisted, intentionally confusing the sun, creating pockets of eternal shade where the air remained cool and still. They built wind catchers, high towers with open mouths that reached up into the sky, pulling the cooler breezes down from the upper atmosphere and channeling them into the rooms below. Even on the hottest day, when the sand outside was hot enough to burn skin, the interior of a Garamantian home was a sanctuary of cool air. Imagine standing in one of these rooms now. The light is dim, filtered through small high windows. The roar of the wind outside is muffled to a gentle hum. You are safe here. You are held in the womb of the stone. The atmosphere of the city at its height is one of quiet dignity. There is no roar of engines, no mechanical hum. There is only the sound of life lived at a human pace. The soft slap of sandals on stone, the rustle of robes, the murmur of voices discussing the harvest, the stars, the gods. It is a civilization of silence and stone. These peoples and these shadow figures of history achieved something that we, with all our modern machines, often struggle to find. They found balance. They lived in one of the harshest environments on Earth, yet they did not merely survive. They flourished. They built a kingdom of fortresses and farms, a network of trade and travel that spanned the sand like a spiderweb of stone. But stone, no matter how thick, cannot hold back time forever. Let the image of the bustling city fade now. Let the voices drift away on the wind. Let the sun set and rise 1,000,000 times. We return to the present. We stand before the ruins. The great walls are broken now, their jagged teeth biting into the sky. The wind catchers have crumbled, their mouths filled with dust. The streets, once aligned with the stars, are half buried in the encroaching dunes. The sand has returned, as it always does, patient and relentless, climbing over the thresholds, filling the courtyards, reclaiming what was borrowed. But there is no sadness here, only a deep resonant awe. To look upon these ruins is to look upon the skeleton of ambition. It is to see the bones of a great dream that once defied the desert. In the moonlight, the ruins seem to glow with an inner light. The pale stone reflects the silver beams of the moon, turning the broken city into a ghostly apparition. It looks like a puzzle left unsolved, a message written in a code we have forgotten how to read. Walk slowly among the fallen pillars. Run your hand over the weathered rock. You can still feel the tool marks of the mason who died 2,000 years ago. You can still feel the intent. It is said that buildings hold memories. That stone acts as a recording device, grabbing the emotions and the energies of those who live within it. If that is true, then this place is loud with history. It vibrates with the pride of the architects who looked at a wasteland and saw a home. It echoes with the prayers of the priests who watched the stars wheel overhead, searching for patterns in the dark. It hums with the breath of the sleeping city, a ghost of the time when the lamps were lit and the doors were barred against the night. The Garamantes are gone. Their empire has vanished into the footnotes of history books, erased by the very sand they sought to master. But they left this behind. They left us the silence of the walls. They left us the proof that humanity can create order out of chaos, that we can build sanctuaries of cool air in the midst of the fire, and that we can map our lives by the light of distant stars. As you stand here, in the center of the ruin, under the vast open sky, you realize that the city has not truly fallen. It has simply returned to the earth. It has become part of the landscape again. The wind blows through the empty arches, making a low, mournful sound, like a flute played by an invisible hand. It is the same wind that cooled their homes. It is the same wind that eroded their names. It is the invisible wind, the only thing that remains. And perhaps that is enough. The stone remembers. The stars remember. And now, in the quiet of this night, you remember too. Let the image of the stone city linger in your mind, a fortress of logic glowing softly in the dark, a place where the walls are thick, the air is cool, and the world is still. Drift away from the ruins now. Leave them to their secrets. Leave them to the sand. The silence waits for you. Leave the blinding glare of the noon sun behind you. Leave the heat that shimmers off the dunes, distorting the horizon until the world looks like a painting left too long near the fire. Above, the sky is a relentless burning blue, a ceiling of fire that watches over the empty quarter. But we are not going up. We are going down. We are descending into the cool, secret memory of the earth. Imagine, if you will, a silence so profound that it has weight. It presses against the skin like a heavy blanket. It is the silence of the underground, the hush of the buried, the quiet of a tomb that is also a womb. Here, beneath the burning floor of the desert, where the scorpion skitters and the viper sleeps, there runs a secret. It is a secret known only to the oldest stones and the deepest roots. It is the secret of the fog garas. To the traveler walking on the surface, the desert is a place of thirst. It is a landscape of denial, where the throat is dry and the eyes sting with dust. But beneath the traveler's feet, 10, 20, perhaps 50 feet down through the solid rock, there is a miracle taking place. There is a river flowing in the dark. It is not a natural river, born of rain and gravity. It is a river born of human will. It is a masterpiece of engineering carved by hands that have been dust for 2,000 years. Created by a civilization that understood a single forbidden truth, that life flows where it cannot be seen. Let us enter the tunnel. The air here changes instantly. The dry baking heat of the surface vanishes, replaced by a coolness that feels like a soothing balm. The temperature drops, settling into a constant chilly embrace that never changes, regardless of whether the sun above is rising or setting. Smell the air. It does not smell of dust or wind. It smells of wet clay. It smells of minerals, limestone, iron, salt. It smells of the deep earth, damp and fertile. And then you hear it, the most beautiful sound in the world. Drip, drip, flow. It is the sound of water, living, moving water. It flows through a channel carved into the floor of this narrow tunnel, a silver ribbon moving through the eternal night. These are the Fogaras. They are vast, labyrinthine networks of underground aqueducts, stretching for miles beneath the wasteland. They were not built with machines. They were built with the chisel, the pick, and the muscle of men who worked in the dark, guided only by the flicker of an oil lamp and the rhythm of their own breath. To build such a thing is an act of supreme patience. It is an act of faith. The builders of the lost city, the Garamantes, knew that the surface water was gone. The lakes had dried. The rains had failed. And so they looked inward. They understood that deep within the rock, trapped in layers of porous stone, sat the fossil water, the ancient remnants of the Green Sahara, waiting to be found. But to reach it, they had to carve the mountain from the inside out. Imagine the darkness of the worker. He stands in a tunnel barely wide enough for his shoulders. The rock presses in on all sides. He strikes the stone, chip by chip, day after day, year after year. He is carving a gentle slope, a gradient so subtle, so perfect, that the water flows by gravity alone, traveling miles without a single pump, moving from the high aquifer down to the thirsty city. This was not the work of a single season. This was the work of generations. A father might begin a tunnel that his son would continue and his grandson would finish. They were carving a legacy into the dark. They were knitting the earth together with veins of empty space, inviting the water to come out of hiding. As we walk along the narrow ledge of the tunnel, tracing the path of the water, we feel the sheer weight of time. The roof of the tunnel is low. We must bow our heads in reverence. Occasionally, we pass a vertical shaft, a column of light piercing the darkness from above. These are the maintenance wells, the eyes of the tunnel, where a single beam of sunlight falls like a golden pillar into the water, illuminating the suspended dust motes dancing in the cold air. But mostly there is only shadow. There is a profound peace here. The water does not rush. It glides. It has no destination but life. It is a hidden pulse, a heartbeat beneath the ribs of the desert. And where does it go? Follow the stream. Follow the gentle murmuring current as it winds its way through the bedrock, mile after silent mile, until finally it sees the light. The tunnel ends, and the water emerges into the blinding brightness of the city. It spills into great stone basins. It gurgles into fountains lined with mosaic tiles. It is channeled into narrow irrigation ditches that run like arteries through gardens of date palms, wheat, grapes. Think of the shock of it, to stand in a land of death and to see a garden, to feel the heat of the sun on your back, but to hear the splash of cool water at your feet. It must have seemed like magic to the travelers who arrived at the city gates. It must have seemed like a gift from the gods. But it was not magic. It was wisdom. It was the understanding that the most precious things are often buried the deepest. It was the knowledge that in a harsh world, one must keep their resources hidden, protected, shielded from the sun that seeks to steal them away. The civilization that built these tunnels lived on a knife edge. They were a people balanced precariously between abundance and oblivion. They drew their life from a finite source, drinking the ancient memories of the earth, sipping the ghost of the prehistoric rain. They built a paradise on borrowed time. And inevitably, the time ran out. The water table dropped too low. The tunnels ran dry, or the sand filled them in. The people moved on, or they faded away, leaving their stone walls to crumble under the wind. The gardens turned to straw, and the straw turned to dust. But, and here's the thought to carry with you into sleep, the river did not entirely die. Deep in the remote stretches of the desert, in places where no foot has stepped for centuries, the fogaras still exist. The people are gone. The names of the kings are forgotten. The surface is silent and empty. But deep down, in the cool, absolute dark, the physics of the earth remain unchanged. In the silence of the underground, water still trickles through the stone. It still gathers in the carved channels. It still obeys the gentle slope cut by the ancient chisel. It flows in the dark, unseen. It flows for no one. There is something hauntingly beautiful about that image. A river that runs without an audience. A gift that is given, even when there is no one there to receive it. It speaks of the endurance of the world. It speaks of the quiet, persistent forces that continue to operate long after our noise has ceased. Perhaps the earth is full of such rivers. Rivers of memory, rivers of time, flowing beneath the surface of our waking lives. Perhaps we only hear them when we are very still. So listen now. Let the silence of your room become the silence of the cave. Let the heavy blankets of the night be the protective weight of the stone. Can you hear it? The faint, rhythmic echo. Drip, drip, flow. It is the sound of the hidden river, moving through the void, carrying its cool silver secret through the eternal dark. It flows on, peaceful and undisturbed, beneath the sleeping sands of history. It flows for you now. The great burning eye of the day has closed, sinking beneath the western ridge in a wash of violent violet and fading gold. The heat, which has held the world in its grip for 12 long hours, begins to loosen its fingers. The earth exhales. A sigh of cooling air ripples across the sand, stirring the dust, whispering through the dry fronds of the date palms. The colors of the world drain away. The red of the sandstone turns to grey. The gold of the dunes turns to silver. The boundaries of the earth begin to blur, dissolving into the gathering shadow. And now, The curtain rises on the true world. Look up, above the silent city, above the sleeping desert, the veil of the atmosphere is pulled back. In the modern world, we have forgotten what the night looks like. We have drowned the dark in sodium and neon. We have erased the heavens with our own artificial glow. But here, in this ancient place, the dark is absolute. It is a velvet canvas, deep and infinite, stretching from horizon to horizon. And it is not empty. One by one, they emerge. First, the evening star, hanging low and bright like a lantern suspended by an invisible thread. Then, the great constellations, the hunters and the beasts burning in the cold blackness. Finally, the river of heaven, the Milky Way, spills across the zenith, a swath of diamond dust so bright it casts shadows on the ground. Tonight, we do not look at the ruins. We do not look at the broken walls or the empty streets. Tonight, we look at the only thing that has not changed in 5,000 years. We look at the map of the eternal stars. To understand the people of the desert, you must understand their relationship with the sky. For those who lived in the Greenlands, in the valleys of Europe, or the deltas of Asia, the earth was the map. They had mountains that did not move. They had rivers that carved permanent lines into the soil. They had forests that stood for centuries. But the desert is a liar. The desert is a landscape of deception. The dunes are not mountains. They are waves of slow-moving earth. A storm can rise in the night and reshape the entire world, erasing the path you walked yesterday, burying the landmark you trusted. To trust the ground in the desert is to be lost. And so, the ancients learned to trust the sky. They understood that while the world below is chaotic and shifting, the world above is a clockwork of divine precision. The stars do not lie. They do not shift with the wind. They are the silver nails that hold the universe in place. Imagine the city as it was in the deep of the night. The markets are quiet. The fires in the hearths have burned down to embers. The children are asleep on woven mats. But on the flat roofs of the clay palaces and on the high terraces of the temples, the watchers are awake. These were the astronomers of the sand. They were not scientists in white coats. They were priests of the void. They stood in the silence, wrapped in heavy wool against the desert chill. Their eyes turned upward. They possessed a lost astronomy, a way of knowing the universe that was as spiritual as it was mathematical. They did not need telescopes of glass and brass. The air was so clear, so thin and dry, that the stars seemed to hang just out of reach, burning with a steady, unblinking light. They charted the procession of the planets, the wanderers that moved against the fixed background of the dark. They marked the moment the dog star rose, signaling the coming of the flood or the changing of the wind. They knew the sky better than they knew the palms of their own hands. To them, the sky was a scroll. It was a sacred text written in light, unrolling slowly across the ceiling of the world. Every flicker had a meaning. Every alignment was a sentence spoken by the gods. Consider the caravan navigator, the man entrusted with the lives of 100 souls and the wealth of a kingdom. He stands at the edge of the oasis, looking out into the ocean of sands. There is no road ahead. There are no signposts. There is only the dark, undulating emptiness. He waits for the sun to vanish. He waits for the true map to reveal itself. When the stars appear, he finds his anchor. He finds the North Star, the unmoving point around which the heavens turn. He finds the belt of the hunter. He aligns his camel's head with a specific cluster of light, and he begins to walk. For weeks he will traverse the void, guided only by these distant fires. He trusts his life to the geometry of the cosmos. He knows that as long as he keeps the stone on his right shoulder, he will find the water. It is a profound act of trust, to ignore the shifting illusions of the earth and walk by the light of a sun that is burning 1 billion miles away. But their connection to the stars went deeper than navigation. It went deeper than timekeeping. Whispers tell us that they believed the stars were not merely balls of fire. They believed they were the souls of the ancestors. When a great king died, or a beloved mother passed into the shadow, they did not believe they were gone. They believed they had ascended. They believed they had taken their place in the great dome to look down upon their children. Imagine the comfort of that belief. To stand on the rooftop in the quiet of the night, feeling small and fragile in the vastness of the desert, and to look up and see 1,000 eyes watching over you. To believe that the light touching your face is the gaze of those you loved, shining down from the halls of eternity. The silence of the desert night is not a lonely silence. It is a crowded silence. It is a communion. They built their city to mirror this connection. We see it in the alignment of the stones. We see it in the way a temple door is framed to capture the rising of the moon on the longest night of the year. They were trying to pull the sky down to earth. They were trying to bind the temporal to the eternal. They tracked the great year, the slow wobble of the earth that takes 26,000 years to complete. They knew that the sky was moving, slowly, imperceptibly, drifting like a great ship on a dark ocean. They knew that the star that marked the north today would not be the star that marked the north in the time of their distant descendants. And they were right. The city has fallen. The roofs where the astronomers stood have collapsed into dust. The clay palaces have melted back into the mud from which they were made. The voices of the navigators are lost to the wind. The maps they drew on papyrus and deerskin have been eaten by the moth and the worm. But look up. Go to your window or close your eyes and see it in your mind. The map is still there. The same stars that looked down on the laying of the first stone are looking down on you tonight. The light from the belt of Orion that strikes your eye this evening began its journey before this civilization was born. And it arrives now, just as they are forgotten. The constellation of the Bear still prowls the northern sky. The sisters still huddle together against the cold of the void. The moon still pulls the tides of the ocean and the blood of the living. There is a deep, resonant peace in this realization. We live in a world of constant change. Our lives are hurried. Our landscapes are paved over. Our history is rewritten. But the sky is the constant. The sky is the witness. It reminds us of our scale. We are small, fleeting sparks in the dark. But we are also part of the great turning wheel. We are made of the same dust that burns in those distant suns. The desert people knew this. They did not fear the dark. They wrapped themselves in it. They understood that the night was not the end of the world, but the beginning of the universe. So as you lie here, drifting toward the edge of your own dreams, let your mind float upward. Leave the heavy earth behind. Rise above the rooftops, above the clouds, above the atmosphere. Float in the silent, velvety dark. See the stars not as distant, cold objects, but as ancient campfires burning in the fields of the night. See them as the map that guides you through the darkness of sleep. The earth shifts, the wind blows, The cities rise and fall. But the stars remain. They are watching. They are waiting. They are the eternal silence, singing a song of light that never ends. It is the oldest storyteller in the desert. It has seen everything, and it has forgotten nothing. Tonight, as the air cools and the shadows lengthen across the dunes, the wind changes its tune. It drops its voice from a howl to a whisper, inviting us into a memory that has been waiting patiently beneath the sand. Let the silence of your room deepen. Let the modern world dissolve, brick by concrete brick, until you are standing on the high sun-baked wall of the ancient city. Look out toward the horizon, where the golden earth meets the pale, hazy sky. At first, there is only emptiness, the vast, terrifying beauty of the void. But if you soften your gaze, if you look with the eyes of memory, you will see it. A smudge of dust rising against the blue, a disturbance in the heat shimmer. It is a harbor, but there is no water here. This is a port on the edge of the sea of sand, and the ships that are approaching are not made of wood and sail, but of muscle and bone and endurance. They are coming, the great caravans. Do not hurry this image. Let it arrive at its own pace, which is the pace of the desert itself. Slow, rhythmic, and relentless. It is a pace measured not in minutes, but in footsteps. Imagine the sound, muffled by centuries of distance. It is a low swaying rhythm, the soft padded thud of broad feet on yielding sand. Thud, hiss, thud, hiss, 1,000 times a minute. The deeper groan of heavy wooden saddles creaking under immense weight. The occasional lazy clanking of a bronze bell tied to the neck of the lead camel, a sound meant to ward off evil spirits in the empty quarters. They are a long, undulating line of shadows, stretching back for miles, threading their way through the valleys between the dunes. They are tired. They are thirsty. They are laden with the treasures of a world that was vaster and more mysterious than we can imagine. As they draw closer to the city gates, let us not focus on the shouting of the drivers or the noise of the arrival. Let us focus instead on the ghosts of the objects they carried. Let us feel the textures of a lost economy. Imagine the sheer weight of it. Sack after heavy sack of salt, the white gold of the ancient world. Mined from dead lake beds in the deep interior, these blocks of mineral were more valuable than metal to people living under this sun. Feel the coarse grain of it through the burlap. Taste the sharp metallic tang of it on the air. It is the taste of survival. It is the oldest storyteller in the desert. It has seen everything, and it has forgotten nothing. Tonight, as the air cools and the shadows lengthen across the dunes, the wind changes its tune. It drops its voice from a howl to a whisper, inviting us into a memory that has been waiting patiently beneath the sand. Let the silence of your room deepen. Let the modern world dissolve, brick by concrete brick, until you are standing on the high, sun-baked wall of the ancient city. Look out toward the horizon, where the golden earth meets the pale, hazy sky. At first, there is only emptiness, the vast, terrifying beauty of the void. But if you soften your gaze, if you look with the eyes of memory, you will see it. A smudge of dust rising against the blue, a disturbance in the heat shimmer. It is a harbor, but there is no water here. This is a port on the edge of the sea of sand, and the ships that are approaching are not made of wood and sail, but of muscle and bone and endurance. They are coming, The great caravans. Do not hurry this image. Let it arrive at its own pace, which is the pace of the desert itself, slow, rhythmic, and relentless. It is a pace measured not in minutes, but in footsteps. Imagine the sound, muffled by centuries of distance. It is a low, swaying rhythm. The soft, padded thud of broad feet on yielding sand. Thud, hiss, thud, hiss. 1,000 times a minute. The deeper groan of heavy wooden saddles creaking under immense weight. The occasional lazy clanking of a bronze bell tied to the neck of the lead camel. A sound meant to ward off evil spirits in the empty quarters. They are a long, undulating line of shadows, stretching back for miles, threading their way through the valleys between the dunes. They are tired. They are thirsty. They are laden with the treasures of a world that was vaster and more mysterious than we can imagine. As they draw closer to the city gates, let us not focus on the shouting of the drivers or the noise of the arrival. Let us focus instead on the ghosts of the objects they carried. Let us feel the textures of a lost economy. Imagine the sheer weight of it. Sack after heavy sack of salt. The white gold of the ancient world. Mined from dead lake beds in the deep interior. These blocks of mineral were more valuable than metal to people living under this sun. Feel the coarse grain of it through the burlap. Taste the sharp metallic tang of it on the air. It is the taste of survival. And beneath the salt, hidden in leather trunks, wrapped in waxed linen, are things of terrible beauty. Run your mind over the smooth, cool curve of an elephant tusk, carried all the way from the green savannas far to the south. It is heavy, polished by hands that have long since turned to dust. It is ivory, destined to become a comb for a queen or the hilt of a dagger for a king. Feel the sudden, shocking softness of raw silk. It has traveled farther than any man in the caravan, passed from hand to hand along the great Silk Road, originating in a land of mist and mountains that these desert people know only as a rumor called Ceres. It is delicate, shimmering like woven moonlight even in the dim dusk. And then there is the scent. Even now, millennia later, if you dig deep enough in the corners of the ruined market stalls, you might find a trace of it. The resinous sacred smoke of frankincense and myrrh. These were the tears of trees that grew in the high mountains of Arabia, harvested with ritual knives, dried in the sun until they became amber jewels. When burned in the bronze braziers of the city, the smoke would curl upward through the narrow streets, coating the stone walls in a fragrant patina that smelled of temples and gods. These objects were not just goods, they were fragments of distant worlds brought together in this harbor of stone. How did they get here? Vespers tell us of the Salt Road. It was not a road paved by Roman engineers. It was something more primal. It was a path worn into the very bedrock of the earth by millions of human and animal feet over thousands of years. Think of the patience required to wear down stone with flesh. It was an artery of connection, a narrow ribbon of packed earth and polished rock that represented the only safe passage through the wilderness. To step off the path was to be lost in the trackless dunes. To stay on it was to be part of a great, unending chain of human endeavor. And now the caravan has arrived. The sun has set. The city gates are barred against the night. The camels kneel in the great caravanserai, their long necks curved in sleep. The heavy loads are stacked, and the fires are lit. This is the true heart of the memory. the moment when the trade in goods stops and the trade in stories begins. Imagine the courtyards flickering with orange firelight, casting long, dancing shadows against the mud brick walls. The air is cool now, and the sky above is a blaze of stars. The smell of roasting meat and brewing tea mixes with the lingering scent of the camels. Sit among them in the shadows. Listen to the voices. They speak in a dozen different tongues: Berber, Punic, Latin, Greek, Old Egyptian. They are merchants, mercenaries, spies, and wanderers. Here, in the safety of the walls, the world shrinks. A man with a scarred face tells of the great stone amphitheatres of Rome, where men fight beasts for the amusement of emperors wrapped in purple. Another, his skin dark as obsidian, speaks of the great river to the south that flows backward, and kings who possess so much gold they grind it into dust to adorn their hair. They speak of monsters guarding mountain passes, of storms that rain fish from the sky, of cities made entirely of glass. Are these stories true? It does not matter. In the firelight, everything is true. These tales were the internet of the ancient world, the way knowledge seeped across continents, carried in the minds of men who walked at the speed of a camel. The city was the great ear that listened to the world, and the great mouth that retold its secrets. But wealth is a transient thing. It is smoke in the wind. Where has it all gone? The tons of gold that passed through these gates, melted down, recast, spent, lost in shipwrecks, buried in forgotten tombs. The ivory has cracked and turned to dust. The silk has rotted away. The spices have lost their scent. The noise of the market has faded into the profound silence that now blankets the ruins. The great energy of connection has dissipated into the heat. And yet, something remains. Let us end with a small thing, a quiet thing. Imagine walking through the ruins today, your boots crunching softly on the pottery, shards and broken tiles that litter the ground. The wind is blowing, shifting the sand around the base of a crumbled wall. And there, glinting dully in the sunlight, half buried, is a small green disc. You reach down and pick it up. It is heavy for its size, cold metal warmed by the sun. You rub the crust of sand and corrosion away with your thumb. It is a coin. Perhaps it is a Roman denarius, stamped with the stern profile of an emperor who ruled half the world. Perhaps it is a local coin, marked with the symbol of the moon god. 2,000 years ago, this small piece of metal passed from a calloused hand to a soft one. It bought a loaf of bread or a cup of wine or a night's lodging. It was charged with value, a tiny battery of human trust. Now it buys nothing. The emperor's empire is dust. The merchant is forgotten. The economy it served has vanished. It is just a piece of metal, resting in your palm, a meaningless token of a forgotten world. And yet, as you hold it, you are touching the very last echo of the great caravans. It is a physical connection to the noise, the smell, and the life of this place. Hold it for a moment. Feel the weight of the time it represents. Then, slowly, let it drop from your fingers. Let it fall back into the soft sand. Let the wind begin the slow work of burying it again. Some things are not meant to be kept. They are only meant to be remembered in the quiet of the night, before the silence takes them back completely. Leave the blinding heat of the marketplace, where the coins clink and the voices rise in a cacophony of commas. Step through the high arched doorway, cut from cool dark cedar. Push past the heavy curtain of woven wool that separates the world of noise from the world of thought, and enter the silence. It is a sudden physical change. The air here is different. It is still. It is cool. It carries a weight that presses gently against the chest, slowing the heart, deepening the breath. It is the weight of accumulated time. You have entered the library of whispers. In every great civilization, there is a center of power, a palace, a treasury, a garrison. But there is also a center of memory. Here, in the heart of the lost city, this building was the mind of the people. It was the vessel that held everything they knew, everything they feared, and everything they dreamed. Close your eyes and breathe in. The scent of this place is older than the stones themselves. It is a dry, sweet smell. It smells of papyrus harvested from the riverbanks, pounded flat and dried in the sun until it became a skin for words. It smells of leather scrolls, cured and rolled tight. It smells of cedar wood shelves, releasing their resinous perfume into the dark. And beneath it all, the sharp metallic tang of the ink, crushed lapis lazuli, ochre, and charcoal, mixed with gum arabic and water. This is the scent of a knowledge. Let your eyes adjust to the gloom. The room is vast, a cavern of shadows. The ceiling is high, lost in the darkness above. But shafts of golden light pierce the gloom, angling down from high, narrow windows near the roof. These beams of light are thick with dancing dust motes, tiny galaxies swirling in the air, caught in a slow, eternal waltz. In this light we see them, the shelves. They are not like the bookshelves of our time. They are honeycombs of stone and wood, thousands of small cubbies lining the walls from floor to ceiling. And inside each one rests a scroll, a sleeping thought, a frozen voice. Move deeper into the room. Your footsteps make no sound on the woven rush mats that cover the floor. In the center of the room, seated at low wooden tables, are the scribes. They are the guardians of the silence. Imagine them. They do not speak. They communicate only in the scratch of the reed pen against the papyrus. Scritch, scratch, dip. It is a rhythmic, hypnotic sound, like the ticking of a clock or the gnawing of a tiny insect. They sit in the pools of sunlight, their heads bowed in reverence. They are not merely writing, they are channeling. They are taking the chaotic, fleeting events of the world and pinning them down with ink, turning the temporary into the eternal. What are they writing? Lean closer. Look over the shoulder of the ghost. Here, a scribe is recording the lineage of kings, names that were once shouted by thousands, names that commanded armies, now reduced to a list of symbols on a fragile sheet. There another scribe is drawing a circle. He is mapping the moon. He is recording the nights when the silver face was full, and the nights when it turned its back on the world. He is capturing the rhythm of the tides, the breathing of the ocean, trying to find the mathematical pulse of the gods. And in the corner, in the deepest shadow, sits an old man recording the secrets of the earth. He writes of herbs that grow only in the shade of the red rocks, roots that can cool a fever, leaves that can bring sleep to the sleepless. He writes of poisons and antidotes. He writes the recipes for life. This library was a celebration of the lost words. Think for a moment of the tragedy of the unread book. Think of the poems that were written in this room. Verses about love, about the beauty of a dawn, about the grief of loss. Poems that were poured from a human soul onto a scroll, rolled up, placed in a niche, and never opened again. We often believe that history is a stone monument, permanent and unshakable. But history is fragile. History is paper. History is dry leaves. It is said that this library contained answers to mysteries that still haunt us today. Perhaps, on a shelf covered in a layer of fine dust, there sat a map. A map that showed the coastline of the world before the great melt, showing lands that are now deep beneath the Atlantic or the Mediterranean. A map to a kingdom that we now call a myth, but to them was a trading partner. Perhaps there was a treatise on philosophy that solved the riddle of human happiness. A wisdom so profound, it could have changed the course of our thinking. Perhaps there was a drawing of a machine, a device of gears and pulleys that could lift stones or pump water. A technology that was discovered, forgotten, and then had to be discovered again 1,000 years later. But we will never know. The tragedy of the ancient world is not that the people died, for all people must die, but that their memories died with them. The oral tradition, the stories told around the fire by the grandmothers, fades when the listener forgets. The written word was meant to save us. It was meant to be the anchor. But paper is vulnerable. Fire. Flood. The slow, relentless appetite of the worm. The simple disintegration of time. As the centuries turned, the city outside the walls began to fail. The trade routes shifted, the water dried up, the people left, and the library went dark. Imagine the last day. The last scribe placing his pen on the table. The last scroll being rolled and placed in its cubby. The heavy wooden door being pulled shut for the final time. The silence, which had always been a guest in this room, now became the master. Years turned into decades, decades into centuries. The roof began to leak. The sunbeams that once illuminated the scribes now fell on empty tables. The wind blew in through broken windows, carrying the sand. The scrolls, those precious vessels of wisdom, began to unspool. The glue dried. The papyrus cracked. The words, written with such care, began to flake away, turning back into dust and blowing out into the desert. When the archaeologists found this place, thousands of years later, they found only the ghosts of the books. They found the stone niches, empty and waiting. They found the clay seals that once bound the scrolls, lying on the floor like discarded coins. The knowledge had vanished. The library had become a tomb of silence. But let us not linger in sadness. For in the logic of the spiritual world, nothing is ever truly destroyed. Where do the words go when the paper burns? Where does the music go when the instrument is broken? Some believe that the knowledge held in this room did not disappear. It merely returned to the ether. It returned to the great swirling cloud of potential that surrounds us all. The medical cures, the star maps, the poems of love. They are still there, floating in the silence, waiting for a new mind to reach up and pull them down. The library is not gone. It has just expanded. It has become the air we breathe. It has become the whisper in the wind. So, as you lie here tonight, on the edge of sleep, imagine yourself entering that room one last time. The walls are whole again. The scrolls are safe in their niches. The air smells of cedar and old paper. The light is golden and warm. You do not need to read the words. You only need to feel them. Feel the presence of the thousands of minds that worked here. Feel the peace of a place dedicated to the preservation of thought. There is a comfort in knowing that we are part of this long chain of memory. We write our stories, we dream our dreams, and we send them out into the silence. Whether they are read by millions or read by no one, the act of creating them is sacred. The scribe puts down his pen. The dust motes dance in the shaft of light. The silence wraps around you like a soft, heavy blanket. The library is open. The books are waiting. And the silence is yours. It is not a fearful silence. It is not the held breath of a predator waiting to strike. It is a heavier, deeper silence. The quiet of a room after the music has stopped. The stillness of a clock that has wound down to its final tick. We stand now at the turning of the age. We have walked through the green valleys. We have swum in the painted lakes. We have watched the city rise from the bedrock, aligning itself with the eternal stars. But the nature of the world is movement. Nothing that is built of matter can remain static forever. The pendulum swings, the tide turns. The season of the earth shifts slowly, imperceptibly, from summer to autumn. This chapter there is the story of a farewell. It did not happen in a single day, though we call it the day the wind changed. History is rarely so dramatic. It was a slow, melancholic drift, a fading of the light so gradual that a child born at the beginning of the change would be an old man before he realized that the world of his youth was gone. It began with the sky. For thousands of years, the sky over the green Sahara had been a theatre of clouds. Great, bruising towers of cumulus would gather in the south, heavy with the moisture of the ocean. They were the bringers of the monsoon, the mothers of the harvest. But then the sky began to clear. One season, the rains arrived a week late. The next, they were lighter, merely wetting the dust rather than soaking the roots. The elders looked to the horizon, shading their eyes, waiting for the dark bruise of the storm that never came. They told themselves it was an anomaly, a whim of the gods. Next year, they whispered, next year the water will return. But the earth had begun to withdraw its favor. Imagine the color of the landscape shifting. Close your eyes and watch the palette of the world turn. For generations, the primary color of existence had been emerald. It was the deep green of the acacia leaves, the bright green of the river reeds, the soft green of the moss on the shadowed side of the stone. Now the emerald began to fade. It turned first to a pale dusty olive, then to a dry brittle yellow, and finally to the color that would come to define the world for the next 5,000 years: gold, ochre, rust. The green Sahara was dying. The brown Sahara was being born. The tragedy of this time is not one of violence, but of confusion. We imagine the priests standing on the high terraces of the temples, performing the rituals that had always worked before. They poured libations of precious water onto the stone. They burned the sacred herbs. They chanted the songs that were supposed to cool the clouds. But the sky remained a perfect, unyielding blue. It was a beautiful sky, terrible in its clarity. The sun, once a nurturing father who warmed the soil, became a tyrant. It stared down with an unblinking eye, evaporating the moisture from the ground, stealing the water from the leaves, baking the clay into a cracked mosaic of thirst. We focus on the imagery of the receding lake. There was a lake near the city, a vast mirror that reflected the passing of the seasons. Year by year, the shoreline pulled back. It retreated like a timid animal. Where once there were fishing boats bobbing in the deep water, now there was only mud. Then the mud turned to hard, cracked earth. Then the wind scoured the earth until it was just white salt, blinding in the daylight. The docks, built of cedar and rope, were left stranded in the middle of a dry field. Useless skeletons pointing toward a waterline that was miles away. This is the meditation on impermanence. We build our lives around the assumption that the world will stay the same. We build our houses near the water. We plant our crops where the rain falls. We believe that the geography of the earth is a promise. But the earth makes no promises. The course of this great drying was not a punishment. It was not a failure of the people. It was a cosmic dance. High above the atmosphere, in the cold vacuum of space, the earth was wobbling. It is a movement known as precession, a slow rhythmic nod of the planet's axis that takes millennia to complete. The angle of the earth toward the sun shifted, just a fraction of a degree. It was a movement so subtle it could not be felt, yet it carried the weight of destiny. That slight tilt pushed the monsoon rain southward. It changed the currents of the air. It rewrote the climate of a continent. And so, the wind changed. For centuries, the wind had been a carrier of life. It had brought the smell of the ocean, the coolness of the rain. It had been a friend that whispered in the palms. Now, the wind became a stranger. It began to blow from the east, dry and hot. It no longer carried moisture. It carried dead dust. This was the beginning of the golden ocean. The sand, which had been confined to the deep interior, began to move. It rode the wind like an invading army. It was a soft invasion. There was no clash of swords, only the gentle, incessant friction of grain against stone. The dust covered everything. It settled on the rooftops. It coated the leaves of the struggling trees, choking their breath. It drifted into the courtyards, piling up in the corners like snow that would not melt. The atmosphere of the city shifted from one of vibrancy to one of heaviness. The pacing of life slowed down. When the heat rises and the water fails, the body moves slower. We imagine the people trudging through the deepening sand in the streets. Their heads are bowed against the glare. There is less conversation in the market. Voices are kept low to conserve moisture. It is a time of quiet adaptation. They did not flee immediately. Humanity is resilient. We hold on to our homes until the very end. They dug the wells deeper. Listen to the sound of the pickaxe striking the bottom of the well. Clang, clang, deeper, deeper, chasing the retreating water table into the dark. They built channels to catch the morning dew. They planted hardier crops, grains that could soar with a sip of water instead of a drink. It was a noble struggle. It was a refusal to accept the silence. But nature is patient. Nature has all the time in the world. The days turned into years, and the years into a quiet desperation. The herds of cattle, depicted so lovingly in the cave paintings, began to thin. The bones of the animals were left to bleach in the sun, white markers on the road to oblivion. The people began to look at the horizon with a new emotion, resignation. They realized in the secret chambers of their hearts that the age was over. The garden was closed. And then came the day of the first breach. It is the image that haunts the end of this story. The city was surrounded by a great wall built to keep out armies and raiders. It had stood for centuries, a testament to strength. But the enemy was no longer a man with a spear. The enemy was the land itself. The sand dunes, driven by the relentless wind, had been piling up against the outer wall for years. Slowly, silently, the golden ramp grew. It rose inch by inch, foot by foot, climbing the stone face of the fortress. And finally, on a day when the wind was howling particularly low and mournful, the sand reached the top. It spilled over the parapet. It was a slow golden cascade, pouring down into the city streets like a waterfall of dry fluid. It made a soft hissing sound as it landed on the pavement. It was the signal. The barrier had been broken. The desert had entered the city. There was no panic. There was only a profound stillness. The people watched the sand spill over the wall, and they knew. They knew it was time to leave. They knew that the wind would not change back. It is a moment of deep spiritual sorrow, but also of peace. There is a peace in accepting the inevitable. There is a peace in realizing that we are small, and the wheel of the world is huge. They packed their belongings. They took the seeds of their plants. They took the scrolls from the library, and they opened the gates. They walked out into the wind, moving south, following the retreating rain, leaving the city to the sand, and the silence descended. The wind continued to blow. The sand continued to pour over the walls. It filled the streets. It filled the courtyards. It filled the rooms where people had loved and laughed and slept. It buried the city, not in anger, but in a warm, golden embrace. It tucked the civilization in for a long, dreamless sleep. As we leave them now, imagine the city as it is today. A few stones poking out of a dune, a shadow under the sand. The wind is still blowing. The sun is still shining. The cycle continues. Perhaps, one day, the earth will tilt again. Perhaps the rain will return. Perhaps the green will rise from the dust. But for now, there is only the quiet. There is only the wind shaping the world, grain by grain, in the endless dark of the desert night. There is a specific quality to the silence of an abandoned house. It is different from the quiet of the night, or the hush of a library. It is a thick, heavy stillness, laden with the echo of voices that have just finished speaking. Imagine standing at the threshold of a doorway in this stone city. The door, made of heavy seasoned cedar, is ajar. It hangs loosely on its bronze hinges, swaying almost imperceptibly in the faint breeze. For 300 years, this door was closed every night against the desert chill, and opened every morning to the rising sun. It was a barrier, a protector, a definition of inside and outside. Now it is neither open nor shut. It is suspended in a state of eternal waiting. Look down at the threshold stone. It is worn smooth in the center, polished by the passage of thousands of sandaled feet. Generations of fathers returning from the fields, mothers carrying water jars, children running out to play. But look closer. In the corners of the stone, where the wood of the doorframe meets the ground, a fine pale dust has already begun to settle. It is the dust of the desert, the patient, relentless ocean that has been waiting outside the walls for centuries. Now it has been invited in. This chapter is not about the glory of the city's rise, nor the majesty of its temples. It is about the quiet, agonizing moment of its end. It is said that the death of this civilization did not come with the roar of chariots or the clash of bronze swords. There were no invading armies climbing the walls. The enemy here was slower, quieter, and infinitely more powerful. The enemy was the changing wind. The enemy was the drying well. The enemy was the sand that choked the irrigation canals faster than they could be cleared. It was a slow strangulation, a realization that crept into the hearts of the people ladle like the winter cold. The realization that the earth, which had once nurtured them, had withdrawn its blessing. Let us narrow our gaze. Let us drift down from the high walls and look into the windows of the small mud brick houses. Let us witness the intimate domestic anatomy of departure. Visualize a room cool and dim. A family is there. The air is tense, heavy with unspoken sorrow. They are deciding what to take into the unknown and what to surrender to the silence. How does one pack a lifetime into a leather sack? How do you weigh the value of memory against the burden of survival? They take the essentials, of course. The watertight skins for carrying precious liquid. The small bags of drought-resistant seeds, carried like hope for a future harvest in a land they have not yet seen. They take the small portable gods, the amulets of carved stone worn smooth by anxious rubbing, the protectors of the journey. But it is what they leave behind that tells the truest story. Look at the table in the corner. It is rough-hewn wood, stained by years of shared meals. Resting upon it is a single clay bowl. It is not a ceremonial object. It is a simple bowl, perhaps used for the morning's porridge just hours ago. A wooden spoon rests inside it. It sits there perfectly still, waiting for a hand that will never return to lift it. In the corner, a large weaving loom stands silent. The warp threads are still strung. The half-finished pattern of a red and black geometric design arrested mid-creation. The shuttle hangs suspended. To leave it is to admit that the tapestry of their life here is unfinished, cut short by necessity. On the floor, near the sleeping mats, lies a child's toy. A small horse carved from soft sandstone, one leg slightly chipped. It looks casually dropped, as if the child was called away suddenly and intended to return for it in a moment. These objects are frozen in time. They are sacred debris, the wreckage of normal life left in the wake of a slow-moving catastrophe. They are the anchors that could not be lifted. The emotion of this moment is not panic. It is a deep, resonant melancholy. It is a goodbye whispered to the stone walls that held their secrets. A caress of the doorframe that watched them grow. And then began the great migration. Whispers tell us of the long silent lines of people moving out through the city, gates at twilight. They walked away from the setting sun, moving toward a horizon that offered no promises. Think of the spiritual weight of that walk. They were not just leaving houses, they were leaving the geography of their souls. They walked past the temples, where the great statues of the gods stared out with stone eyes, abandoned by their worshippers. Did the people fear retribution? Or did they feel that the gods had abandoned them first? Hardest of all, they walked past the necropolis outside the walls, the city of the dead. They left behind the marked graves of fathers and mothers, the small cairns of stones covering lost children. To leave the ancestors alone in the encroaching sand was a profound severing of the cosmic order. It was a wound that would never fully heal. As the last family crossed the threshold, and the sounds of their footsteps faded into the soft dunes, a new sound took over the city. The sound of emptiness. The wind, finding no resistance, began to explore. It howled through the empty window frames. A low, mournful flute song. It pushed against the doors, making the dry hinges groan and creak in the night. It swirled through the marketplaces, lifting the dust in dancing spirals where merchants once haggled. The silence that descended was absolute. It was a silence waiting to be filled by memory. Where did they go, these architects of the sand? The historical record is mute. Some believe they marched east toward the great river Nile, merging with the empires of Egypt, their distinct culture dissolving like salt in water. Others suggest they went north to the coast of the Great Green Sea, becoming sailors and traders in strange lands. Or perhaps they simply faded into the deep desert, becoming the ancestors of the nomadic tribes who still cross the waste today. People who carry their homes on their backs, having learned the hard lesson that to build in stone is to invite heartbreak. We will never know. They walked out of history and into myth. But before they left, before the final gate was passed, there was one last ritual, one final act to mark the end of the age. Come with me now to the main square of the city. It is deep night. The stars above are brilliant, hard and indifferent, burning with the same cold light they have cast for eternity. The moon marks the abandoned streets with the long shadows of silver and black. In the center of the square there is a fire pit. For centuries, this was the heart of the community. Here, great bonfires were lit to celebrate the harvest, to honor the solstice, to welcome returning caravans. It was a place of warmth, light, and shared humanity. Tonight, it holds the last fire. Perhaps it was lit by the city elders, a final offering to the spirits of the place. Perhaps it was just the remnants of the last evening meal, left burning because there was no reason to put it out. Watch it with me. The flames are dying down now. They are no longer leaping orange and yellow. They are a deep, pulsing bed of red coals. The heat radiates outwards, touching the stone benches where no one sits. Occasionally, a piece of wood snaps with a sharp retort, sending a shower of bright orange sparks spiraling upward into the darkness. They rise quickly, carried by the heat, yearning for the sky. For a brief moment, they look like new stars born of the earth, but they fade quickly, cooling into ash before they can reach the heavens. A thin column of pale smoke rises from the embers. It is a straight line, connecting the earth to the sky, a final tether between the realm of men and the realm of the gods. It is a signal fire that no one is watching. It is a beacon marking the end of the world. Slowly, slowly, the red coals begin to darken. A skin of grey ash forms over their surface. The heat diminishes. The smoke thins, becoming a ghostly wisp that dissolves into the starlight. The city is holding its breath. And then, the last ember flickers and goes dark. The connection is broken. The warmth is gone. The city has officially passed from the land of the living to the land of ghosts. The wind picks up, scattering the fresh ash across the square. The sand begins its slow, patient work of burial. The silence is complete, and the city sleeps, waiting for a morning that will not come for 1,000 years. The last fire has turned to cold ash in the square. The last footstep has faded toward the horizon, swallowed by the distance. The heavy wooden gates, which once swung open to welcome kings and caravans, now hang still on their hinges, guarding nothing but emptiness. The city is alone. It is a profound solitude, a silence so absolute that it feels like a physical weight pressing down on the stone. There is no sound of human breath, no cry of a child, no murmur of prayer. There is only the sound of the wind, the ancient, tireless breath of the desert, beginning its great work of reclamation. The desert does not conquer with violence. It conquers with patience. It does not destroy. It covers. And so begins the era of the golden ocean. Whispers tell us that the sand is alive. It is a restless, shifting entity, a vast, granular sea that is forever hungry for new territory. For centuries, the city held the sea at bay with high walls and constant labor. But now, the defenses are unmanned and the tide begins to turn. It starts with a single grain, a tiny speck of quartz, lifted by the breeze, carried over the wall and dropped into a silent courtyard. Then another, then 1,000 more. It is a slow, hypnotic invasion. If you were to stand in the center of the marketplace and watch, you would not see the city disappearing. The process is too gradual for the human eye to perceive in real time. It happens in the spaces between seconds, in the quiet hours of the night. It is a burial measured not in days, but in centuries. The wind blows, and the sand accumulates in the corners where the walls meet the floor. Little drifts form against the locked doors of the houses, like snow that will never melt. It gathers in the folds of the forgotten weaving loom. It fills the empty clay bowl left on the table. Season after season, the golden tide rises. It flows over the thresholds and spills into the rooms, covering the stone floors in a soft, ankle-deep carpet. It creeps up the legs of the furniture. It buries the hearthstones where the fires once burned. The streets, once bustling arteries of commerce, become rivers of slow-moving dust. The sand rises to the level of the windowsills, pouring through the open frames like dry water, filling the houses from the inside out. This is the process of erasure. It is nature taking back what was borrowed. The stone came from the earth, and now the earth is rising to meet it. As the level of the sand rises, the city begins to lose its definition. The sharp edges of the architecture are softened. The wind, carrying its abrasive load of grit, acts as a slow chisel. It rounds the corners of the temples. It erodes the inscriptions on the monuments, smoothing away the names of gods and kings until the stone is blank once more. It is a meditation on deep time. In this new era, there are only two witnesses: the sun, burning in its fixed orbit, and the wind, carving the landscape according to its whim. Human history, which felt so permanent to those who lived it, is revealed to be a fleeting shadow. Layer upon layer, the shroud is woven. Grain upon grain, the blanket becomes thicker. 100 years pass, and the doorways are gone, buried beneath 10 feet of dune. Another 200 years, and only the second stories of the buildings are visible, strange islands of stone floating in a sea of sand. 500 years pass. Now only the highest points remain, the tops of the temple towers, the crenellations of the Great Wall, jutting out of the undulating landscape like the skeletal remains of a prehistoric beast. And finally, even these disappear. The golden ocean closes over the head of the city. The waves of the dunes roll smoothly over the place where a civilization once stood. The horizon is restored to its pristine, unbroken line. To look at the desert now, you would never know that anything had ever existed here. The erasure is complete. The memory of the place has faded from the surface of the world. But beneath the silence, something miraculous has happened. The city is not dead. It is merely sleeping. Down in the deep dark, beneath 50 feet of crushing sand, the city is preserved in a state of perfect suspended animation. The dry, stable environment of the deep desert is the ultimate preserver. The air down here is cool and still. The destructive rays of the sun cannot reach this depth. The moisture that rots and decays cannot penetrate the thick veil of dust. In the buried rooms, the murals on the walls retain their vibrant colors. The ochre reds, the lapis blues, the charcoal blacks, as bright as the day they were painted. The papyrus scrolls in the library, though brittle, are intact, their wisdom waiting in the dark. The child's toy, dropped on the floor a millennium ago, rests undisturbed, covered in a soft, protective layer of fine silt. It is a subterranean Pompeii, but without the horror of fire and ash. It is a gentle entombment. The city has become a secret kept by the earth itself, and like all great secrets, it generates legends. Up on the surface, as the centuries turned into millennia, new people crossed the wastes. Nomadic tribes, Bedouin wanderers, guided by the stars, would camp near the spot where the city lay buried. They did not know what lay beneath their feet, but they felt the energy of the place. They felt the resonance of the sleeping history. Whispers began to circulate around the campfires. Stories were told of a lost city of brass, or a palace of gold hidden by powerful magic, visible only to those who knew the secret words. They spoke of jinns, spirits of fire and air, who guarded vast treasures buried in the dunes. They heard the wind howling around the invisible contours of buried towers and thought it was the voices of ghosts. They saw the heat shimmers dancing over the sand and thought they were seeing the shimmering walls of a phantom city. The myth became larger than the reality ever was. There is a profound mystery in this invisibility. Consider the traveler crossing the desert today. He is weary, his eyes fixed on the next well. He leads his camel over a particularly high, graceful dune. He does not know that directly beneath his sandals, perhaps only 20 feet down, lies the throne room of a forgotten king. He walks right over the top of a temple where thousands once worshipped. He sleeps on top of a library filled with lost knowledge. He is separated from a different world not by distance, but by depth, by a veil of eternal dust. Perhaps there is a peace in this. We often think of being forgotten as a tragedy, a final death. But for the city, being forgotten is its salvation. By disappearing from history, it escaped the ravages of the modern world. It was not looted by treasure hunters. It was not dismantled to build new cities. It was not destroyed by modern warfare. It was tucked away, safe in the womb of the desert, protected by the very thing that destroyed it. It rests there still, beneath the moonlight that turns the dunes to silver, beneath the howling wind that rearranges the surface of the world every night. The city sleeps its long, untroubled sleep. It is waiting. Not to be found, perhaps, but simply to exist in the quiet dark. A silent testament to the time before the wind changed, covered gently by the endless, patient drifting of the grain. We have traveled a great distance tonight. We have walked through the lush, green memory of the prehistoric rains. We have touched the rough, warm stone of the rising walls. We have sat in the cool dark of the library. And we have watched the last ember fade in the deserted square. We have witnessed the life, the breath, and the death of a civilization. But the story does not end in the dark. It does not end with the burial. Come with me now, one last time. Let us rise up. Let us leave the surface of the earth entirely. Let us drift upward, past the highest dunes, past the drifting clouds of dust, past the thin blue veil of the atmosphere. We enter the cold, quiet vacuum of space. Here, high above the turning world, there are new stars. They are not the balls of fire that the ancient priests worshipped. They are stars of silver and glass, machines built by human hands, drifting in silent orbits around our planet. They are the eyes in the sky. They are the watchers that never blink. For decades, these satellites have gazed down at the Earth, capturing images of our world in a language of light and code. They see the sprawling cities of the modern age, the glowing webs of electricity, the movement of ships on the ocean. But when they look down at the Sahara, they see something else. To the human eye, looking out of an airplane window, the desert is a blank canvas. It is a sweep of yellow and ochre, featureless and vast. But the eyes in the sky see deeper. They possess a sight that penetrates the veil. Using radar that strips away the sand, using sensors that see the heat left behind by the day, they reveal the ghost beneath the surface. This chapter is the collision of the ancient silence and the modern gaze. Imagine looking at a satellite image of the deep desert. On the screen, it looks like a textured map of gold. But there, faintly etched into the pixels, are lines. They are straight lines, perfect squares, right angles. Nature does not make right angles. The wind does not build the squares. These are the ghost lines of the lost civilization. They are the shadows of the fortress walls, still standing beneath the sand, invisible to the walker, but screamingly obvious to the sky. They are the footprints of the city, stamped into the bedrock, preserved by the very dust that hid them. And look closer. Do you see the dark, winding ribbons that snake across the image? They look like veins in a leaf or cracks in a mirror. These are the paleochannels. They are the dry beds of the rivers that ceased to flow 5,000 years ago. The radar sees the density of the ancient mud buried under the dry sand. It sees the memory of the water. It is a profound and haunting realization. The map of the Green Sahara is still there. The geography of paradise has not been erased. It has only been covered. It feels like a secret being whispered across time. The ancient builders looked up at the stars to find their way. Now, we have placed our own stars in the sky to find them. It is a beautiful, symmetrical irony. The circle is complete. Let us descend now. Let the view from the heavens fade. Let us fall gently back down to earth, following the coordinates of the ghost lines. We land in the middle of nowhere. Stand here for a moment. Feel the ground beneath your feet. It is hard, packed gravel and soft, shifting drifts. The wind whistles past your ears. A high, thin sound, like a flute played by a spirit. There is nothing here. To the naked eye, there is only the horizon. There are no walls. There are no gates. There are no fountains splashing in the sun. But you know that 10 feet beneath your boots, there is a street. You know that if you were to dig, you would find the hearth where the last fire burned. You would find the clay bowl left on the table. You would find the silence of the library. This is the feeling of sacred uncertainty. We have mapped the walls. We have traced the rivers. We have proven with our cold and precise technology that they were here. But what have we really found? We have found the shell, but not the soul. We can see the outline of the temple, but we cannot hear the chant of the priest. We can measure the width of the canal, but we cannot taste the sweetness of the water. We can find the foundations of the house, but we cannot know the name of the child who dropped the toy horse. Their names are lost. Their songs have faded into the ether. Their fears, their loves, their arguments, and their dreams have all dissolved into the great neutral silence of the universe. And perhaps that is how it should be. There is a comfort in this mystery. In a world where everything is recorded, everything is tracked, and everything is known, the desert keeps its secrets. It allows the past to rest in dignity. It reminds us of our own place in the order of things. We too are builders of cities. We too look at the sky and wonder. We too believe that our world is permanent. But the wind that blows across these ruins is the same wind that blows through our streets. The time that buried them is the same time that carries us forward. We are small, we are fleeting. We are dust that has learned to dream for a little while. And when our time is done, the earth will claim us just as it claimed them. It will cover our works with a gentle blanket. It will smooth our sharp edges. It will turn our noise back into silence. This is not a sad thought. It is a peaceful one. It means that we do not have to carry the weight of the world forever. It means that we can lay our burdens down. It means that in the end, everything returns to the quiet, simple state of rest. The journey is over now. We have walked the full circle, from the water to the stone, from the stone to the dust, and from the dust to the memory. The ghost in the satellite imagery is not a haunting. It is a wave. It is a hand reaching out from the deep past to say, we were here. We lived. And now we rest. Accept that invitation. Let the image of the desert fade from your mind. Let the golden sand turn to a soft, warm grey. Let the sound of the wind drop to a whisper, and then to nothing. The city sleeps beneath the sand. The water sleeps beneath the rock. The stars sleep beneath the light of the sun. And now, you must sleep too. Drift into the quiet dark. Let the mystery hold you. Let the silence wrap around you like a heavy, comforting blanket. The history is written. The book is closed. The candle is blown out. There is only peace.